Welcome to One-on-One with Expert Flyer. This is your host, Lisa Caslin. And today we're talking to Byron Edgington. He is the author of a memoir and somewhat of a guidebook, I guess you could call it, for future commercial pilots. And it's called Postflight, an old pilot's logbook. Welcome, Byron.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have had some stretch of a career in terms of flying, and I know your specialty is really in piloting helicopters, which I'm kind of fascinated by because there are quite a number of careers that, people don't generally think about too much outside of, touring around New York City or something like that. So tell us a little bit about your career.
Yeah, well, start to finish in the capsule version, I guess, I learned to fly helicopters in the U.S. Army and way back in the 20th century. And there's this little place called Vietnam. And, well, the Army was kind enough to send me over there and get me some on-the-job training. And I spent a year in Vietnam flying a Huey, if you know what that is.
I don't.
Yeah, anyway, you look at any Vietnam footage or any kind of advertisement for Vietnam, you'll see a Huey in it. I guarantee you. It was the workhorse of the Vietnam War. Anyway, I learned to fly in the Army, came back to the States and started looking for commercial jobs. And I should go into some detail about that, I guess, because like you said, most people don't appreciate, first of all, the definition. A commercial job is just a job where you get paid to fly.
Uh-huh.
That's all it amounts to.
That's right.
And so I got my commercial license from the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, and went looking for flying jobs, and I found them. And some of that I flew for 20 years. I flew for a hospital in Iowa City, flying a rescue helicopter called Air Care. In 20 years, I flew 3,200 patient missions. I flew news and traffic in several big Midwestern cities, and I've got some real stories about that. I wish we had more time. I flew a job one time where I was counting power poles.
Okay. That's very complicated stuff.
And we were taking pictures of power poles and marking them with GPS. Now, prior to that, I thought all power poles looked the same, but evidently not. So anyway, we counted upwards of 300,000 power poles from a helicopter.
Oh, goodness.
And at 30 knots. So the big challenge in that job was staying awake in the cockpit.
Yeah, I bet.
But anyway, I closed out my career. I retired in 2005 when I was flew on the island of Kauai. The northwesternmost Hawaiian island. And I flew tourists around the island all day. Wow. And it was awful. I mean, somebody had to do it. But,
yeah, poor you.
Yeah, I know it. It was a real challenge.
Yeah. Well, that was a nice ending punctuation to a great career. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we've been seeing and reading, for quite a few years now that there has been this shortage of pilots. What do you think is causing that? Why are people not pursuing this as a career?
Yeah. Well, let me give my 2 cents worth here, and that's true, by the way, in either category, in either fixed wing or rotary wing, airplanes or helicopters.
Sure.
There is a shortage. And I think it's possibly because there isn't, two things. First of all, I think young people, somehow they think you have to have all these magical powers to become a pilot. And it's just not true. As I said in my book, Postflight, you can do this. And it's a career that's well worth pursuing, and it's well within your capability. I mean, unless you have some kind of physical deficiency of some kind, it's possible to do this. And maybe people just don't think of it. Maybe the aviation business hasn't advertised itself well enough. And one of my focuses in the book as well, I should mention this, is young women. And when the overall worldwide, when the ratio of young women in commercial cockpits is 6%,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
6%, that's
low.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so I have kind of oriented the book a little bit around young women who want to fly because it offers them so much. It offers them agency and dignity and a really decent career. And also, as far as I can tell and as far as I know, there are no pay discrepancies in the cockpit. And also, the aircraft doesn't recognize gender. The only thing an aircraft recognizes is incompetence. And so it's an excellent career choice for young women, I think.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful and exciting. I think
Yeah.
you're right. It could be the psychological part of it. People just are intimidated by it. Oh my goodness, in order to fly this machine through the air, I have to be I don't know, a calculus pro and I don't know what.
I don't know what either. But
Yeah.
I'll just add a little slight addendum to that whole thing. I flunked algebra in high school, so
Oh, okay.
and then I went on to fly for 50 years. So if that helps anybody.
So what do you think the air travel industry needs to do to attract more pilots? I mean, if you were going to give them
Yeah.
some advice, what would you tell them they should do?
Well, it's an interesting question because I just noticed recently it was United Airlines I read about has established their own training center, which is kind of unheard of in a way, because they have so few pilots. There's so much attrition in the ranks of their older pilots, and because of the COVID epidemic, so many people just gave it up and decided to do something else, and so they really do have a shortage in the airline business, the FAA Part 121, commercial scheduled airline operations, and they're facing a pretty severe shortage of pilots. So I think maybe, as I said, I think they need to advertise that more. I think they need to get people out to high schools to show them, especially men and women together in uniform. Should go into high schools and should go into gatherings where young people are. And show them this is a really viable career for you. And
they need to do some hardcore recruiting.
Yeah.
So, one of the main reasons why you wrote this book was to also, I guess, impart some of your wisdom. So, if there were one or two things that you think would be most important for aspiring pilots to know, either before or as they start their aviation career, what would you like to tell them?
Okay. Now, number one is I mentioned the physical part of it. That is number one on the list. Is anybody who aspires to be a pilot needs to know definitively that they are physically capable of doing that. I'm not talking about the mental part of it, but in order to fly commercially and especially in the higher ranks of commercial aviation, you need to have a flight physical, and you take a flight physical every single year of your career. And so going forward, you need to know that you have the physical ability, and these are not difficult physicals, but they are more involved than your standard. Just because you can fog a mirror, that doesn't mean you can pass a flight physical. In other words.
Yeah, so I know. I'm sorry. I think, when we were talking before the interview, you had mentioned that it might be a good idea to schedule your own quote unquote FAA physical. Yes. But how would one do that? Where would you go to get an FAA physical?
To go to the FAA website, and they will list, FAA certified flight surgeons, they call them. And there are a lot of them. And go in and tell them that you want a Class 1 or a Class 2 medical. And they will set you up and schedule you for that. And it might cost a little bit of money to get that done. But that's definitely the first step. The second, and I list in the book, I have a list of resources. Because there are lots of flight schools out there. There are flight schools for both airplanes and helicopters. There are scholarships available. I've listed some of them as well. And one of one of the, I mean, is counterintuitive, but well, maybe not so much. One of the first steps might be to go to an airport, go to your local airport, talk to the flight instructors there, pick their brains, talk to them tell them what you want to do, and go from there, and they'll have good advice for you. So the information is there. It's a question of seeking it out and asking the right questions, and looking for people who have been through that. And it's my experience in aviation that people are very, very helpful, and they want you to succeed. So
I think I think that's good advice. And I know we were also talking about the cost associated with attaining a career, and your method was pretty smart. So I mean, I think that if you follow your path, and you make sure that from a health and ability perspective, you're all clear on the FAA physical side, and you want to save money, but learn how to fly, joining the military may not be a bad idea.
Yes, it's an excellent idea, especially so if you want to fly helicopters, but you can transition from a helicopter to a fixed wing without any difficulty. In fact, this is going to sound like I'm doing one of these things, but learning to fly a helicopter is much more difficult than learning to fly an airplane.
Oh, really?
Just for technical reasons. Helicopters they're inherently an unstable machine, where an airplane is inherently stable. And that's really all I need to say about that. But the military offers the best, and you have to commit to some service time. Nothing wrong with that. And in my case, I flew for 2 years on active duty in the military. I learned to fly, and I spent a year in Vietnam. And then I got out of the active part of the military, and I went into the National Guard, and I spent 28 years in the National Guard while I was flying commercially. So I was doing both at the same time. And the military will teach you to fly. They will give you hours, and they will prepare you. They won't give you a commercial licensure. That's on you. But they will prepare you in terms of experience, in terms of the initial certifications, and they will give you flight time.
So, and that's the key. That's the key, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hours are it.
Yeah. So let's get into some drama now. I mean, you were a pilot in Vietnam. That in and of itself, I can imagine, comes with many scary experiences. And also then flying professionally for a hospital, right? So give me some of the, what are some things that really stick out in your mind in terms of either danger or just crazy cuckoo situations that you've gotten into?
Well, there's, again, I don't know how much time we have, but I'll tell you a funny story. But most war stories, I mean, they start out with "there I was." They always, that's the standard phrase to introduce war story. There I was. But I'll tell you a funny story. I was going into a hot, we called it a hot LZ. That meant the landing zone had enemy activity around it. That's all that meant. And I was going into a hot LZ one afternoon, and in the back of the Huey, there's my door gunner on one side, my crew chief on the other, and they both have access to a 30 caliber machine gun. And if the LZ is hot, we were allowed to fire our weapons all the way in, just to suppress the enemy fire. Well, I was hitting in, and I was 30 seconds away from landing, and both of the 30 calibers were rattling away back there with this awful clatter, and all of a sudden, my door gunner on the right-hand side, his weapon stopped. And in my headset, I heard this whistle, like in a Friday night football game. I heard this guy whistling. And I landed, and his guy's name was John Mabry. And I said, "Mabry, what is going on back there? And what's with the whistle?"
Yeah.
He says, "Well, my gun jammed, sir. I was calling time out." So, we were 20 years old. What can I tell you?
Right.
So he's whistling away back there and jamming that gun, trying to get it going again. So he's calling time out. Anyway, the The hospital. Yeah, the hospital was the most gratifying flying I did. I couldn't wait to get to work in the morning because it was matching up my skills with people who needed those skills. And it was just the only way to live as far as I could tell. It was wonderful work. And we were out there ready to help people whenever they needed help. And it was just, I can't even describe it, the feeling. And I was very good at it.
So you had mentioned the other day that you were in a dicey situation where your engine actually died on you. How did you navigate that situation?
Yeah, that was in a Huey, believe it or not, and I was flying the Ohio National Guard at the time. And I was 20 so miles north of Cincinnati, Ohio. And it was just dusk. The sun was down, it was getting dark. And the engine quit. And so I should mention that helicopters all have a built-in feature called auto rotation. That capability, they have the capability to what we call auto rotate. And so what I did was, in order to get into auto rotation, I had to configure the controls so that the airflow was coming up through the rotor system up this way instead of down this way. And it's a very simple process. So I managed to get into auto rotation, and I picked a spot to go to, and I put the aircraft in a field. The guy had plowed this field just the day before, so it was nice and soft. It was awfully nice of him to do that. And I put the aircraft down, and we were all fine, and the aircraft was good, and that was it. But, something else we talked about, Lisa, yesterday, we talked about Captain Sullenberger.
Yes, we did. Yep.
Here is one thing I mentioned in the book, and this is a really important skill for any aviator, no matter what category you're flying. It's the best thing you can do in any kind of emergency is to make a decision and stick with it. And that's what Captain Sullenberger did. He realized what had happened. Both his engines were out because he had ingested all those birds. He was an expensive glider at that point.
Yeah.
Couldn't make it to Teterboro, couldn't make it back to LaGuardia. It was out of the question.
Yep.
He decided, we're going in the Hudson River. And he never wavered from that decision. And that's why everybody walked away from that accident. Or swam away, I don't know.
Well, do you think that the powers that be were trying to, dissuade him from doing that and to try to make it to one of the airports? I mean, was there yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, they were tossing out, but it's important to note that people tried that same thing in a simulator, and without fail, they couldn't land that airplane. So he did the right thing. My point was, he made a decision and he stuck with it.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing that night when my engine quit.
Yeah.
They tell you, pick a spot and go there. Don't change your mind. And that's a very important aspect of the emergency scenario. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
cool under pressure. Yeah. All right. I have to ask you this. Is there...
Can I sit down?
Yeah, good thing you're sitting down. No, I want to know, is there a rivalry between fixed wing pilots and rotating wing pilots?
There is. There's an ongoing, Sure, yeah. Because us rotor heads, we always say, airplane drivers are people who love to fly and would really like to try it someday. So, yeah. And I think generally what they say is that your helicopter is no more than several thousand rotating parts banging against each other and waiting for an oil leak or something like that. I don't know. So,
Well, listen, we thank you so much for sharing part of your story. And I just want to give a little plug to the book one more time.
Yeah.
It's called Postflight, an old pilot's logbook.
Can you see that, or are we blocking
it's
it
disappearing into your beautiful background for some reason.
Yeah.
There it goes. And it is written by you, Byron Edgington. And if folks want to take a gander at it, maybe buy it, they can find it on Amazon, and they can go to your website, right?
We can indeed. And I should mention that it's available right now on hardback and paperback. The digital is not ready just yet, but possibly today.
Oh, good.
So,
Good.
yeah, and Lisa, if I can squeeze this in, if somebody buys it, I hope they do. Please write a review.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It does help with those algorithms. And
Yes, it
we
does.
want to, we want to help you out with that. Listen, thank you so much, Byron. I
Yeah.
hope we can continue to talk to you at another time and
Yeah,
keep up with
absolutely.
your travels and I don't know, you may have another book in the wings. Who knows, right?
You never know. That's right.
All
Yeah.
right. Well,
Thanks, Lisa.
you have a great afternoon.